So today I'm going to do a video that I'm surprised that no one actually looked into this. And of course, I have to be the first one in human being or human history to actually look into this. And yes, I put two and two together, just like everything else. This video is about EMF. EMF is electric and magnetic fields. And it's an energy, also often referred to as radiation. And of course, it is man-made. Some come from the sun, and as I stated many times, actually the sun's EMF is actually a lot more valuable, and it's also safer too, which they haven't figured that out yet, but that's that's beside the point. But it's the waste, and it's the EMF waste or electro waste, I call it, or radiation, or positive and negative ions, because when it fuses together, it becomes an energy. But when it splits, that's when we have problems with, or at least I think it is. Now, before I go into this video, I'm going to show you about a little history. Let's go back to the Egyptian time. The Egyptian actually used a lot of metals. They used it on their crowns, holding staff, and even the pyramids. Remember, they used to put gold on the pyramids. It's because, and what is gold, or what is metal? Metal attracts positive and negative ions, or EMF. Now, let's move on a little bit into the medieval time. The medieval time, they used to do armors. They used to make swords out of metals. They used to put them on castles, like rooftops. They used a lot in armors, as you can see, like, protecting armors. They also put a lot in iron gates, on the front of the castles. And the most thing that funny that human, until now, until you see this video, it's going to make a lot of sense for you. You know how people in the olden days, they always raise up their sword? Well, let me explain a little bit before I go further. Now, here's the reason why they made all those things metal. And as I said, that's why they raised their hand up in sword. I mean, they raised the sword up in the air. They raised the sword up in the air is because the sun is actually charging the iron or the metal itself. Then it absorbs into the person's body. Now, back in the medieval time, and back in the Egyptian time, which is 5,000+ years ago, they do not understand, or they did not understand, EMF. And because all the EMF absorbed to the metals, because that's what this video is about, if absorbed to the metal, the person who holds the metal absorbed that EMF. For instance, during the Jesus Christ or communions or mass, you've seen this before. They hold a cup in the air. What is the cup? The cup is metal. They have a lot of metal things. And another thing too is that they put wine inside a metal cup. Well, drinking wine, it's actually blocking EMF. I mentioned one of these before, because it's alcohol. It's a form of alcohol. As I mentioned this in my previous other videos, that alcohol actually blocks radiation. So, in some people actually feel good from drinking this, not just from being buzzed, but actually feeling good from this. Later on, they started to do coins. Coins. What is coin? The value of coins, the value of metals. The value of metal and coins is, what is it? It's a form of energy. So then they start making churches and temples, and they usually use out of metal. And believe it or not, people actually rub on Buddhas. Like, for instance, Buddha's belly. That's how they got their energy. So they think by rubbing on the Buddhas, or the metal itself, which they did not know, they actually absorb some of that energy. Later on in life, like, in once metals start to become, very popular, they started to make trains out of them. They started to make rooftop out of like churches and stuff, and you've seen these. They actually make things like in the malls or staircase, all out of metals. It's because it does give you energy. And but here's the problem, and here's what we are actually facing today. In today's world, we don't need any type of energy. We don't need that extra energy. It's because we have everything. We have our phones. We have our Bluetooth. We have our houses. Our house is controlled by them. Not mine, of course, because I try to stay away from that. But our lights is controlled by them. Our refrigerators, our computers, our speakers, our wireless microphones, our temperature sensors, our TVs, our wireless security systems, wireless entries, heating systems, and so on and so on and so on. But little as we all know, or little, although I know it, but not a lot of people are aware of this, is that all the wireless stuff, including your modem, including your internet, including your games, including all the wireless stuff that you get around the house, they all contribute to this. And they all put out EMF. But that's not EMF. EMF is the dirty EMF, we call it, or I call it, the dirty radiation, which is used radiation, meaning when they pump out that energy. We get to get the signals, but what does the rest of the signal goes? Well, we only get some of that, and then the rest of it just linger in the air, which is absorbed onto our body. Now, not only absorb into our body, it absorbs into our food, it absorbs into our forks and knives and spoons, it absorbs into our utensils, or even absorb into during our cooking. During cooking, especially electricity, it will absorb into our pots and pans. Pots and pans and forks and knives and all that, anything to do with metals. Even when you're eating and you're touching the metal, it will absorb that into you. Now, imagine we get them from water. Because as I stated in my older videos or other videos, that it likes to attract radiation, attracts to water. Radiation attracted to our body, because our body is, like they said, 98-point-something% or 90% of it is water, which you probably already know. Now, even just regular water that's running down the stream, running down a river, or even just on the lake, is attracted to that. So the radiations are attracted to that. During the cooking is attracting to that. Although once you heat up the water, some of the radiation leave. So if the radiation leave, that's why you see steam coming up. Now, so you can see we are actually being absorbed a lot of that. And I talk about Bluetooth a lot. I talk about Bluetooth and Wi-Fi's and cell phones and cell towers, actually the most #1 culprit to that. For one, it's actually Bluetooth. That's #1 on my list. It's actually Bluetooth. Secondly would be Wi-Fi, because everybody's in the house have them, and it keep pumping out that energy out without even using it. Now that's beside all that point. It's just our regular household stuff have it. Like I stated before, our computers, our TVs, our cell phones, wireless speakers, our mouse, our cameras, and everything else, even little tiny remote controls or our games. Everything in our house is like that. Even now they have microwave that you can turn on a certain time. You can actually access your microwave. You can access your refrigerator. Like, you know how you can access outside for seeing your weather. Without any of these stuff, without any of the wireless stuff, we won't be able to see it. Sort of like our wireless camera too. So you can see the whole history of that. And also too, when you get into your car, guess what happened? You get all these wireless stuff from your radio, your Bluetooth, your wireless stuff, or your wireless entry, which I hate. I hate that in a car because I can actually feel it. And it's all over the place in the car. I mean, just the car alone. Your door worked on that. You can actually, shut off your doors or lock your doors just by wireless. Yes, and some of them it's integrated to your phone, so you can actually do everything with the phone. But like I stated, it's all over the place. And then they invent this thing called iClouds. Now you're going to see a lot of devices with iClouds. So it's going to control everything. But that's beside all these. It's all beside the point. Because we have to get back to what I talked about earlier. I talk about the Egyptian used to use metal. The medieval time used to use metal. And then they started to discover metal actually give them energy. But they did not know, and like I stated, and that's what this video is about, they did not know that it's actually all the positive ions, negative and positive ion that is in the air, in the sun, and all in our environment that's actually absorbing to the metal. Then, when you touch the metal, or when you wear it, or like you're holding the sword and raise it up, that's where you gain the energy. So you're not really gaining the energy, or you got any power because they hold a sword, they feel powerful, or when they wear armor they feel powerful. It's not because of that. It's because they were touching the metal. And when you're touching the metal, which a lot of in the electrical world, you became the antenna. Well, that's what this video is about. This video is about all the regular stuff that we are accustomed to, like our stairs. When we ride on a train, we touch metals. When you're in the car, we touch metals. When you're in a shopping mall and you're walking up the escalator, you are touching metals. When you are at home, all your utensils and your pots and your pans and certain stuff, even copper, very popular. Copper, pots and pans, it's all made out of metal. We cook in metals. We eat in metals. Now imagine all that. Anytime you touch it, you actually gain the positive and negative ions, which you no longer need. You only need a certain amount. Like I stated, we already have them in our water. We already have them in our food. We already have them all over the place. We actually walking around. We are walking around and we actually absorb them. We don't need to hold metals like we used to, or we don't need to put our rooftop to be metal to gain them, or we have to stand out in the sun to get them. These are all man-made and they are everywhere. And the reason why I do this video, I want to raise aware. I want to let you know to see what your environment is. And I want you to see that everything, your common household stuff, it's actually giving you EMF itself. Not just the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth, or anything to wireless, or even the cell phones and the cell towers, or any of that nature. Just the utensil alone. Utensil meaning your forks and your knives and your spoons and your dishes. Some dishes, people use them as metals. Or, like salad bowls and pots and pans and cooking things with. It's all out of metal. And imagine just touching it by itself. You are absorbing it. When you absorb those, it goes into your body because you are charging, just like how I said the Egyptians in olden days, medieval time, they wear armor all made out of metals. And because of that, there's a lot of sickness. That's what's happening into our world. And that's why we're having such a problem. We have more sickness now than ever before. And although we are in a pandemic, you're going to have to scratch your head a little bit on that one. Just to let you know on that one. But beside that, all the sickness is come from EMF. And it's come from, just like I stated before, it's come from everywhere. Everywhere in your daily stuff. Everywhere you look, it's that way. Your stairs, some, not all, buildings or shopping malls, they're all made out of stainless steel. Our train, for instance, or our cars, or whatever, it's all out of stainless steels, or copper, or iron, or any type of metal, even touching coins. And that's what the history of this. And I am surprised, and like I said, I'm surprised no human actually have ever made or even thought of this. I guess it makes me unique, right? To think of all this stuff. But just the history of that. And if you look into the history of that, you will see all these stuff. And when you see all this stuff, it kind of makes sense. And that's why long ago, they used to, like I said, long ago, they used to use cups that is out of metal because they're holding it. Or coins, because they're holding it, they feel the EMF in it and they feel strong. And they think holding metals or anything, any type of metal properties, it's like that. Another thing too is jewelries. I didn't even mention that. I mean, jewelries, or, well, I did kind of mention that when I said about the Egyptian. The Egyptian used to make jewelries, crowns, and head, their headsets, or their crowns, or they apply that into their, garment, or whatever it is. It's all made out of metal. I mean, even when they die, they still think that metal would do something, and that's why they paint things out of gold. Mostly gold, because as you know, gold actually absorbed the most. Gold and copper. That's why copper now is really expensive. But that's just the history of that. The history of understanding EMF and how to understand it. And how that you can see that everything in our lifetime now is all made out of metal. And the next time, if you go out and you touch something out of metals, you will feel it. Sensitive people will know exactly what I'm talking about. Just like how I said in temples, like Buddhist temples, they made everything out of metal. For example, just like Buddha, rub the belly. Well, if you rub the belly of a Buddha with porcelain, you won't feel anything. But if you rub the Buddha with metals, I'm pretty sure you're gonna feel something. And bronze statues, a lot of people likes to rub on bronze statues. You've seen that in many places. They made things out of bronze because people touched them. And long ago, like I said, long ago, they used to get energy out of it. But today's world, you no longer want to touch metals because everything you have is metal. You no longer need to touch metals. So this video is about understanding of it, understanding what is going on to our world, and understanding what is actually happening to our world, understanding that all of these that I have put together about this video, of course there's more. I can only think certain things on top of my head, but of course there's more things, of course, but because of that, there's a lot of sickness. And yes, I said there's a lot of sickness that come out of metal, but people don't know it yet, okay? Not just EMF, there are sickness from metal itself. And yes, I will later on make different videos about what I have discovered about metals that actually making people sick. Not all, but it does. It does make people sick, and it does create extra metals inside your body. And I'm pretty sure you've heard this before. Metal poisoning, or mercury, or copper. People do have copper poisoning as well. So by touching it alone, by having it, and by having it actually in the air, I would call it the nanoparticles. That's what I call the sickness is out of. It's actually the nanoparticles that actually would release from the metal itself. Just the metal itself, it will release it. And yes, you can smell stainless steel. You can smell metals. You can smell copper. You can smell gold. What is it? How possibly that we can actually smell copper, gold, and silver, and iron? Yes, you can, through radiation. And that's why you're able to smell all these metals now, because there's a lot of radiation. And yes, you can actually, if you're sensitive enough, you can actually smell it. And you know exactly what I'm talking about in this video. And there are people who smell it. And there are people who are gotten sick by it. There are people who are getting sick by just the enough metals in our lifetime that will go into our body. And it actually, as you already know, any type of metal that goes into our body will harm us. Although we need certain amount like iron and copper and even gold, certain stuff to go into our body, because actually our body actually needs it. But it's too much of it. That's what this video is about. It's too much of EMF and too much of metals go into our body. So I'm going to actually end this video, and I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you learn that there's a lot of things in our environment that is actually harming us, and without us knowing. Just the stuff in our house alone. What you see on the screen right now, all these stuff just to make our life easier, but is actually harming us. And I am surprised, like I said, I'm surprised that no one actually put this all together. I'm surprised that I'm the first person in the world that actually aware of this. And imagine, there's a lot of people out there, and you won't find a video like this. It's because no one's aware of this. Can you imagine? Let's take it from the Egyptian times to now. Let's say 5,000 years. And imagine 6,000 years and people are not actually aware of this. None whatsoever. So you can see throughout our history that there's a lot of EMF has gone through. But now it's actually harming us more than ever. It's because of our surroundings. And like I stated, our surroundings, Bluetooth, cell phones, Wi-Fi, and everything is inside our house. it's hurting us, including the cell phones, including the people who are sitting out on the street. You know, they just sit out on the street with all their phones, with all the cell phones. Everybody's on the cell phones. Can you imagine how many actually EMF is actually pumping out? Beside even the cell towers, just as much as the cell tower is pumping out, just as much as our cell phones pumping out. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something from that, and I hope that you be aware of your surroundings. And like I stated, I am surprised that no one in human history actually talked about this. Other than that, that's about it on this video, and I will see you in the next video.